ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies. I want to point out first that I'm very happy to be here.
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers?
I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
And that's the bottom line. Because when J Boney speaks, he speaks. What do you have to say about it? And how long has this been under the radar? Too long, if you ask me.
Real Talk Junkies with Jeffrey L. Boney.
Look, I'm not afraid to tackle the tough issues. Other people are scared to talk about this. Really? I mean, really? You had to take it there?
And now, here's the host of Real Talk Junkies.
Hey, what's up, RTJs? You know what time it is. Your boy, Jeffrey L. Boney, live and direct here on another hot edition of Real Talk Junkies Live here on the Forward Times Facebook and Instagram pages. So glad that you guys tuned in on today. Make sure you share the broadcast with your friends, your family, and all of your individuals on social media. Let them know that they need to get in right now. We're going to have a real good discussion today about something that's near and dear to all of us, something that all of us, especially here in Texas, should care about. I want to let everybody know there are literally, hear me out, 666 new laws going into effect here in the state of Texas today, as of 12:01 a.m. September the 1st, 2021. 666. You hear me, Joshua?
Yes, sir.
666. You hear me, JJ? No. 600 and you hear me, RTJs? 666. Now, although the number 666 is usually synonymous with something evil, not all these laws, these new laws are evil, but for many, some of these new laws are evil in their intent, in my opinion. And several of them are downright dangerous and concerning, to be honest. Back in June of 2021, I wrote an article in the Houston Forward Times entitled "A Setup Waiting to Happen," where I discussed the hotly discussed and talked about permitless carry legislation that was at that time not only being discussed, but also up for a vote, and how that particular legislation, if it was passed at that time, could negatively impact the Black community, people of color, and potentially lead to more problems that are already being experienced here in the greater Houston and Texas area. That bill, House Bill 1927, has not only since been passed by the House and the Senate in Texas, it's also been signed into law and has taken effect today. That's right, today, y'all. As of 12:01 a.m., this law has literally given any Texas resident age 21 and over the opportunity, the right to openly carry a handgun in public without having any permit, any license, or any training. Yes, you heard that right. No permit, no license, no training. By signing House Bill 1927 into law, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has given more people the ability to carry handguns by eliminating the requirement that Texas residents have to have a license to carry one. I mean, the Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, they're going to, be offering a free online course in gun safety, but it's not obligatory. It's not mandatory. This new law will also allow for less accountability in that Texans will not have to be fingerprinted or be properly trained to possess a handgun as long as they meet certain criteria. For instance, anybody who is technically deemed prohibited from possessing a firearm due to any state and or federal laws, or of course they may be on parole or stuff like that, whatever the case may be, they'll not be legally authorized to carry a gun. But how would anybody, whether they're law enforcement or just regular Texans like all of us that are watching, that are in Texas, how will they know who fits the criteria and who doesn't? This is where the concern lies about this new law that is upon us. With the tremendous uptick in violent crime and aggravated assaults across the United States and right here in our backyard in Texas and greater Houston area, allowing more access to handguns without being able to properly verify who should have one is troublesome. In addition to the bad apples that are out there committing crimes, the narratives that are out there that are often used by many members of law enforcement that are relative to people of color, black folks, etc., has many minorities, black people in Texas extremely worried. Black people who may choose to openly carry a handgun, as now allowed by this new Texas law that just went into effect at 12:01 this morning, could run the risk of being identified as a criminal by law enforcement officials by simply following the new law. Many members of law enforcement testified against this bill in Austin before it was passed and signed into law by Governor Abbott, expressing their concerns that this legislation would not only endanger law enforcement officers, but would also allow criminals to gain greater access to guns to commit more crimes. Let us hope and pray that this new law does not do more harm than good in Texas. One other eye-opening new law taking effect on September the 1st, you want to hear this, Joshua? It involves the new penalties for soliciting a prostitute in Texas. Now, I know you don't get down like that, Joshua. RTJs, I know y'all don't do it either. But according to the details of House Bill 2795, which was authored by Representative Symphonia Thompson, Democrat out of Houston, anybody who is caught in the act of soliciting a prostitute will be subject to a felony conviction that will be punishable by up to 2 years in jail. Is it really worth it? Texas is the first state in the United States to have a law in place to make solicitation of prostitution a felony offense. House Bill 929 also is a new law that now requires any law enforcement official to keep their body cameras on during the entirety of any active investigations. And Senate Bill 69 now prohibits law enforcement officials from using chokeholds or excessive force during arrest unless necessary to prevent officer or bystander injury. And any officers who witness these violations are required to report the incident. Joining me today to talk about these new laws that just went into effect this morning at 12:01 a.m. September the 1st are Metro Police Chief Vera Bumpers, Harris County Precinct 7 Captain Smokey Phillips, and former HPD Sergeant Shelby Stewart. Welcome to Real Talk Junkies today, y'all.
Can you hear me? I got knocked off. I'm trying to.
Yes, we can hear you.
Get back on.
All right. All right, we got that. Then we got this bumpers coming on, right? All right, there we go. We got everybody now. All right, right. Welcome to Real Talk Junkies, y'all. We can. You're on mute.
Chief thank you for inviting me.
All right, Shelby, do we got you? I think we may have you on mute as well. You may be on mute as well, Shelby. I do hear you, Captain Phillips and Chief Bumpers. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I'll start with you, Chief Bumpers. You are the head of a police department here in the greater Houston area, Metro, and you've been for some time. And I know that you are privy now to some of these laws that were not only being discussed on the House and Senate floor in Texas, but also now have been signed into the law by signed into law by Governor Abbott and went into effect this morning. Can you talk about, let's talk about permitless carry first, since that was one of the biggest, bills that was hotly contested and even advocated against by many law enforcement groups and agencies and officials. What are your thoughts on this permitless carry, and how have you equipped your officers to deal with this?
Well, we completed doing an overview of the bill with all of our officers on yesterday. We wanted to make sure that they were clear on what the bill stated, as well as understanding how far they really should go. We still need probable cause in order to detain or go speak to anybody. You just can't walk up to anybody and say something. So there's still probable cause necessary. But as far as I can see it, it's sort of like, I guess this is just another level of the open carry. And now the permitless carry, there are a lot of concerns, especially when you're talking about someone in their early 20s that are now allowed to carry a weapon without any training. It definitely causes some concerns. But we also want to understand those persons who are not able to carry a weapon. There are still some provisions that say, even though there is this bill that now is allowed, you can carry a weapon, there are still those persons who cannot, of course, and there are still places that you cannot. Definitely at polling places, at schools, those persons who have felonies still aren't allowed to have a weapon. So we just need to understand the bill in its entirety, especially as law enforcement personnel, so we can definitely enforce it properly. And I believe as citizens, everyone should be cognizant of this bill and understand what's going around, what's around you, your surroundings now, very important for you to pay attention to, because just because somebody does not look like a criminal does not mean they're not a criminal. And just because someone may look suspicious to you does not mean they're a criminal. So we just have to make sure that we are properly applying the law as it is written, and as citizens make sure that we are cognizant and aware of our surroundings and what's going on.
Brother Phillips, Captain Phillips, do you believe that this has opened up Pandora's box here in Texas, whereby now, just like Chief Bumpers just said, just because someone doesn't look suspicious doesn't mean that they're not a criminal, and just because somebody looks suspicious to you doesn't mean that they are a criminal? Do you believe that this is going to, has opened up Pandora's box, not only as it relates to law enforcement officials who already have a tough job of trying to decipher who may be committing a criminal act or not, but also regular citizens who, are going to be carrying these weapons and going around and maybe in quote unquote fear of their life?
Well, is that me with the vibration?
Yeah, that's you.
Let me.
I think you may be trying to hear yourself talk.
Well, let me figure this thing out, man.
Okay, while you get that together, you got it? All right, try it now.
Try it now?
Yeah, go. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Hear you perfectly.
Well, I think Chief is correct in her assessment. And I think some of the concerns involving the Black and brown community is that will they increasingly become targets because now everyone can carry a gun. I think another concern would be how does the new law affect interaction between police and the Black and brown communities? So, I mean, I know it's going to heighten the awareness of some officers. It's going to heighten the fear of some officers when they're pulling over Black or brown drivers, assuming that they're okay to have a gun, that automatically will assume that they will have a firearm on them. On the other end of that, if they make, any movement toward the weapon or any overt movements, as we talk about in law enforcement, how would they react? How would the officer react? And that's very important, as Chief talked about, getting the troops to understand that every Black person or brown person or white person can look the part and may not be the part, or some may look the part and be the part. In other words, you have to go with an open mind that this person is legally carrying a weapon. Of course, you have other issues. If someone late at night, you catch them by a building or something like that, it could be a sense of maybe some criminality might be in place. But to me, it's gonna be a tough call for a lot of officers on the street because it's something new for Texas. It's something new to peace officers that patrol the streets and try to keep these communities safe. So it's going to be something different. I'm sure, as Chief said earlier, there's going to be a lot of challenges for not only the people in the command staffs in law enforcement agencies, but also the sergeants, and dealing with the amount of complaints that may happen based on an officer using force. Just the mere drawing of a weapon and pointing it at a motorist or a person is a form of force.
So Chief Bumpers, I mean, I know that, you know, you guys put your lives on the line each and every day, and the officers that report to you and in other agencies as well. But I mean, clearly this has got to be concerning to you and to many officers because of the fact that now, like Captain Phillips just said, you know, you have to assume going up to an individual, whether they're a motorist or not, that they could have a weapon.
Yeah, and that is concerning, which is why the engagement and supervisors ensuring that they constantly stay engaged and speaking with the officers is very important. Because right now, citizens in a vehicle are going to be concerned. There was already a heightened concern and awareness when citizens are being stopped by law enforcement because of all the things that have gone on over the recent years. So that fear and that heightened concern was already there. And so it's very important now that as leaders, from the sergeant, the lieutenant, every level, stay engaged with officers, especially new officers coming into this profession. That engagement, that constant communication, and it may require supervisors doing a little bit more as far as checking by on traffic stops. It may require a little bit more communication by the officer on the radio and giving a little bit more detail now. And definitely for citizens, making sure that they are following all the rules of showing your hands, letting the officer know ahead of time, I have a weapon. The communication is key to anything, and it is definitely going to be key to this law. And so I'm not definitely, I think I'm not against body cams. I think that is one of the best tools that we have, and making sure that officers have their body cams on at all times and that we enforce that. And where to the point where there's discipline if your body cam is not on. And so what we do, we randomly check body cams. Whenever there's a use of force, it's an automatic review of body cam. Traffic stops, we just do random checks of body cams just to make sure that we're policing ourselves and that we know that our officers are doing what they're supposed to do. So there are a lot of layers to this, but I do think that it starts with leadership. It starts with supervision, because that's where people will come to when things go wrong. But will be incumbent upon us to make sure that we're following the rules and guidelines that set forth, not only by the law, but in our policies and procedures.
So I know that none of us can be in the head and mind of anybody to at all determine what they're thinking or why they make the decisions that they make or making the decisions that they make. But for the life of me, can either of you share with me why the legislators and the governor felt this was so important to do, especially when we see such an uptick in crime and violence and aggravated assaults across the state of Texas? I mean, seeing that they live here, and there were so many people who testified against this bill, including law enforcement. Can either of you give me any type of idea, inkling as to what the upside of this is? Captain Phillips.
Well, one thing, we live in what they call a red state, and people in the red states love to carry guns. It's been said that it was an assault by the Democrats to take guns away. And I think based on us living in a red state, which is Texas, that the governor is feeding into his constituents. And there have been many other states have joined in the constitutional carry piece that the governor signed into law. But I think a lot of Texas is a big gun state, and that's how it is, and I tied into a lot of stuff. You can go back years ago when the police criminalized a lot of black men, black women, and they were given felonies or tried and convicted of felonies. Even, I was in Jeffrey the other day, I was looking at Missouri County, how they were picking juries. It was amazing how they were picking these juries in order to get convictions on folks, meaning they would pick certain.
Let's be clear. All white juries.
Well, yeah, we be clear on that. Yes, it's correct.
All right, I just want to make sure it's clear. When you say picking juries, that would mean that you were including, people that you really wanted, but there were some people that they didn't want, and it was particularly black people. Well,
that is a true assessment. But if you look back over history and time, from civil rights to Jim Crow laws, how many blacks were criminalized, that now with the constitutional carry, they're not allowed to even possess a weapon. So it ties in not only from what September 1st brings us today, it ties in what 1964 brought us, 1950 brought us, 1940 brought us, and then if you look at even with the protesting, all the young kids that were arrested and charged with felonies in those towns that they were protesting, some peacefully and some not. But the thing is, it's a groundwork that a lot of African Americans won't be able, and brown and Hispanics won't be able to participate in the constitutional carry. And the benefits of the two also that when I teach the LTC class, license to carry class, it was really costly in the beginning. That a lot of African American and brown families could not afford to pay up to $400 or $500 to get a permit. And the only caveat to this law that the constitutional carry to me is that now people who can't afford to have the LTC fees and classes, they can now just participate in just purchasing a weapon by signing just a clear yellow form that the state of the feds allow and the state requires that you sign. So it's one benefit to it.
I'm gonna say so that's the plus. That's the plus it is.
Well, that's the plus side of it. That if you're a person that lives in you don't have much money to spare to take care of your family, you can now go save your coins up and buy you a weapon to protect your family without having to go through the required training that was required initially from the LTC license to carry permit stuff.
Or you could also, save up your coins to have increased road rage incidents, or to bleed the block and protect your block and cause other harm, like just what happened with the officer that was killed from New Orleans that was here. So Ms. Chief Bumpers, what were they thinking? What's the upside of this?
There is no upside, and I don't think we can really articulate what they were thinking. They probably can't articulate it, knowing that one of the things is that Texas is not the first state to have permitless carry. We're just the largest state. So other states do have it, and I'm sure they probably will use that as an example. But one of the things they cannot refute is the fact that gun violence is up everywhere. And as you said, the road rage, robberies, just no respect for life and no fear of death is what we're seeing now. And it is really disheartening. It's unfair for our young people who are coming up to have to live in this type of situation. It's almost like we're going back to the old Wild Wild West. But I, again, will always go back to leadership. It is our responsibility to educate those persons that we work with, as well as our community. I don't think our job stops just because we wear this uniform. And so it's important to me that I educate those people around me, family, friends, and in my community, because I tell people law enforcement is what I do. It's not who I am. Because when I take this uniform off, I'm a part of the community. I could be driving down the street and be involved in someone shoot at me in a road rage incident, just as we saw the officer from New Orleans. I'm sure they did not know he was a police officer. But we have to hold everybody accountable now. Our judges, as has been spoken quite eloquently by the DA and by Chief Fenner, as well as others across the U.S. It almost seems like all the DAs got together and say, hey, let's just be soft on anybody did in a gun crime, but any other crime. But we have to hold people accountable with our vote and with our voice. So it's very important. And again, we probably can't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what they were thinking. Obviously, they've not been impacted and probably won't be impacted. But now we have to be about action and make sure that we try to do our best to keep our young people safe, our children safe, and our community safe.
So, go ahead, Smoke.
And the P-Regular Chief was saying, I saw the news conference when those 2 arrests were made. Ironically, both were on bonds. And one guy was on bond for aggravated robbery for robbing out the Galleria area. Mm-hmm. So we have to do better as far as bond reform is concerned. I know there's some legislation out that may have passed, talked about bonds and repeated people let out on bonds. And I clearly understand that bonds are not punishment, but bonds should be a deterrent to keep dangerous people out of our communities. You know, and just going back to the gun constitutional carry. I think that we should, as people like yourself, Jeffrey, should run media issues to talk about gun safety, because we giving 21-year-old men and women guns. They don't even know about gun safety. Don't even know about just a basic handgun class. You know,
they probably look at movies like Belly and some other like Boys in the Hood and stuff like that, and they think that's how you hold a weapon and confront an individual.
Well, another thing too, one of the dangerous side of it is that how they store their guns. Now, if you go to you can't take your gun in anything that's over 51% alcohol sales. That's Specs, a bar, neighborhood bar that has a sign. You can't allow. And they say, "Hey, go take your gun back to the car," and most likely they'll take that gun and put it in the glove box or put it under the seat. Now, I was at a meeting about 2 months ago. I don't know if you were there or not, Chief. When ATF talked about it, 3,100 plus guns stolen so far this year in Harris County. Mm-hmm. Jeff, that's a lot of guns out there that nobody knows where they at.
Mm-hmm.
How many again?
About 3,000, if I'm right, Chief, 3,000 plus.
3,000 plus. And they said
that was stolen since January of this year?
Yes.
Yes.
In Harris County.
Mm-hmm.
They were just in Harris County.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. They were saying most of the stolen guns found in Mexico are out of the Houston area. That was another comment he made that I thought was very interesting. But a lot of the guns that are stolen, those were people who had concealed carry license. They are storing them under the seat in the glove box. And some of those are law enforcement officers because they do it too. And that's the first thing people are going for. They're breaking into your car to get the gun. So we just have to, as Captain Phillips stated, we have to really be very diligent about being careful with storing our weapons, careful with talking about using a weapon. I would not advise anybody, if you can take the gun class, it's worth saving your money to take the gun class. It's just too many things that can go wrong, not to mention the gun getting in the hands of our children and them playing with it and being killed. We see that quite often. So gun safety is critical, and most agencies will provide you with free gun locks. So there's really no excuse not to have your weapon secured. And please don't leave it in the glove box or under the seat.
So where if they have to put their gun somewhere, say they went to a club, lounge, or bar or whatever, or a place where they can't take their gun inside, where would they store it? If
I would have a small safe in the trunk of my car, and I'd have the key.
Yeah, the trunk is the best spot. Mm-hmm. If you want to have to take it back out. I know I was in Papados one day, and the manager came and told me that they don't allow open carry inside the restaurant. So he was afraid to approach the guy, and knowing he knows an officer, so he asked me, hey man, can you just walk up there with me? And he just asked the guy, hey man, we don't allow open carry inside our business. So I told the guy, he said, well, what am I do with my gun? I said, well, you might take it in your trunk. So the trunk is, if you don't have a lockbox, as Chief talked about, the trunk is probably the safest place that you can store it. Not the glove box, not the console in the middle or under the seat. The trunk is probably the most safest spot that you can store. Put your gun inside while you are enjoying or while you're dining or whatever you're doing.
Now you have some individuals who may have Jeep vehicles or SUVs that don't have a trunk per se, that they can lock. Would the same thing apply, like putting it in the very back with a lock, safe, or what?
I would have this again, a small lock box, and you have the key with you. If you have a vehicle that does not have a trunk per se, that would be the safest thing, I believe. And also, people with children, I do believe that you should educate your child on the gun. That way you share with them, they're not curious. You've already showed them this is mom, dad's weapon. You don't play with this. It's dangerous. This is what can happen. We want to hide it, but we don't tell the children anything. But I think it's very important that we educate our children about it. We don't have to tell them where we're going to store it, but you let them know this is a good, because they may go to a friend's house and see a gun and start playing with it. So if you educate them, then at least they know.
Well, and I say what Chief's saying, that you have to, small kids could find anything. You can lose a diamond ring 3 years ago, and the kids will find it. It's just like a weapon. Most people put their weapons in their closet. And when you leave, kids are more inquisitive. They go all over the house. You say, Grandma, I found your diamond ring. And Grandma saw it for 10 years. Where you find it at? Oh, I just found it. I mean, that happens. And, when you got kids at home, and Chief is right, you have to educate. And I'm going to say this, Jeff. When I teach class, and not making the issue about black, brown, and white, but the thing is, I see a lot of white young children on the gun range. Mm-hmm. Some black people, I want to take my kid around a gun. I don't want to run a gun. Guns are bad. Guns are bad. Guns are bad. No, guns are not bad. But the thing is, if we educate our young kids, I take my small kid to the gun range with me when I go shooting. They love to shoot now. I said, well, at first they were afraid until they pulled the trigger and said, man, Dad, I like this. It's fun. So education is the key. Because if you have a gun and you possess a gun and your kid get the gun and shoot someone else, you are held criminally responsible for. Mm-hmm. Mm. You are, as you know, I did recently in the paper, I thought it was a 3-year-old kid, correct me, shot a 2-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So think how difficult, how tragic it would be if your 5-year-old killed your 3-year-old. You already suffered a traumatic death, funeral, all the other things, and then when it's buried, they come put handcuffs on you. Mm-hmm. And take you to jail because of that irresponsible action of leaving a gun in a place that shouldn't be safe. Because I'll tell you what, with carrying the customs of carry and carrying these guns come a great responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I tell you this. And with these young drivers, I always teach them about complying with the police, about chilling out when they stop you, complying, the 4 C's I call it, complying with the police when they stop you, completing the traffic stop, and complaining if there's an issue. So you have to chill, you have to comply, you have to complete, to complain. I call it the 4 C's, and I tell the young kids that, hey man, ain't no courthouse. I ain't never saw a courthouse. Chief, if I'm wrong, I've never saw a courthouse on the side of the roadway at MLK and 610. Mm-hmm. Never seen one. And I've traveled a lot of states. I've never seen one in the stadium where they had a courthouse at roadside. So the thing is, you want to, and I tell people, I teach a class too, you have a gun in your car, have the police tell you what to do. They say, are you armed? Yes, do not reach for that gun. Keep your hands on that steering wheel. You say, officer, what would you like me to do next? And this is going to carry on to the next thing about video cameras, because most like those traffic stops are being videotaped in most larger agencies. So when your hands on that steering wheel, don't just say, where's your gun at? You reach to the side. Man, what happened to Falanzo down in Minnesota? He was a gun holder, and he still was killed. So you keep your hands on that steering wheel and you ask the officer, what would you like me to do next? If the officer instructs you to get your gun, you know what I'll do? Officer, I'm gonna start my car and you can get my gun. Oh. You know what I'm saying? Because by rule, the officer has a right to disarm you anytime. He can say, hey, I want your gun. He can disarm you and you have to give your gun. So that's part of the rule too that they have in place. And also with the video cameras, important too to capture the scenes, what happened that day. I know it's been a large discussion about when officers turn them on and when they turn them off, but Chief can probably tell you they have stringent rules into when you engage someone, you have to have that camera on. Mm-hmm. When engagement is over, you can take the camera off. So, you know, and that video captures that scene. And I'll tell you this, those videos have changed a lot of scenes. Those videos have questioned a lot of reports that officers have completed. Those videos have changed prosecutions. Because years ago, and Chief started off, she can tell you years ago, we didn't have all these video cameras. It was your word against that officer in the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. And imagine, poor person like me going to the state of Texas, I ain't had a chance. I'm using my own tax money to beat me. Okay.
So you it's a good segue, and and I'm so glad you mentioned Philando Castile because and sharing all of this important information that you all are sharing about gun safety as well as about traffic stops, because you bring up Philando Castile and how he was when he had a license to carry, and he was trying to provide that to the officer. That officer, because of probably a preconceived narrative and notion about him being a black man, the man was a teacher, educator, but he assumed him to be a threat. And so he shot that man, not only in front of his girlfriend, but in front of his daughter who was in the back seat. So I think that that's information that you're sharing is so critical, because I just feel like this law is a setup waiting to happen. For us as African Americans, particularly, and African American men, because there's always this narrative that has existed in law enforcement, regardless of whatever agency you're a part of, that a black man is a threat. The black, especially if he looks a certain way, or if he's young. So I just thank you so much for sharing that important information about the 4 C's. And the traffic stop, and then of course gun safety as well, because we don't need guns going into establishments and something happens, an argument ensues or something else transpires, and then before you know it, boom, somebody's dead or somebody's in jail because of an incident, and now you're facing a more serious crime and potential jail time. Going to the segue, House Bill 929. I mentioned it earlier. It now requires any law enforcement official to keep their body cameras on during the entirety of an active investigation. Now, I would have assumed, Chief, that this was something that all agencies were already doing, and they didn't need a law to make this go into effect. But why they need this law to become official and signed into the books?
Because even though, I guess I can speak for everybody, but we have the policy where you must activate your body cam when you're engaged in any interaction. But There's
You're
also
talking about it at your agency, at Metro.
yes, at my agency,
Okay.
and I'm sure most agencies are like that. That body cam must be on. But there also was that small caveat in there saying if there's discussion about a tactical situation or if there's a private discussion, you can mute the body cam, and so that discussion would not be heard. But that is I think my thought is maybe that's why they had to put this out, because there a lot of agencies probably had something similar where they're in certain situations you can mute the body cam. And so, and if you're not there, if leadership's not on that scene and officer tells you, we were talking about how we were going to address the whole situation and what, we were going to do something different, or we were going to place this person under arrest and we needed to talk about how we would tactically do that. They could give you any story and that's what you would normally go with. But I think now that you are required to keep it on no matter what you're discussing, that changes the whole dynamic. And I believe that's why that was put into place. That's just my opinion. I may be wrong, but I'm not opposed to that. I think it's a good thing. And officers have to see it as a positive as we move forward. There are things we don't want to discuss, but in full transparency, and that's what we've come to after so many incidents where innocent people were killed. That's our buzzword now. We want to be transparent. So there is nothing in the midst of a discussion when you are detaining someone that should be private. And I think that is the move toward that. And eventually officers, you have to accept and as the law, but they will come to understand it will be more beneficial to them than harmful if they're doing the right thing.
So you're saying that in times past or prior to this law, individuals would engage in a situation on the scene or with a potential suspect or whatever, and they had the legal authority to turn that body camera off as long as they stated that they were having a private conversation of a tactical conversation discussion about a tactical discussion of how to deal with it. And did in the research, and I wasn't there to hear this particular testimony during the committee hearings and on the House floor or Senate floor, but did they have facts and proof to show that because of them turning off their cameras during those times, that there were incidents that occurred that warranted this to be put into law?
I wasn't there, but I would venture to say that's probably the case. Or they showed where there were many times where the camera never was turned on and the person would say, everything went down so fast, I didn't have time to turn it on. So there are probably many scenarios that could have been used where now we need to put this into law to say, no matter what, we want the body cam on. Again, it can be a very good resource. It can help the officer, but it can also hurt the officer. And any chief would probably tell you the majority of the complaints have gone down against officers since the implementation of body cams. They have really gone down. Your use of forces have gone down. Your complaints against officers, because they know now things are recorded and that they are randomly looked at. Body cams, you just do a random search of body cams, and a lot of the investigations we've done is based on us policing ourselves and finding infractions and saying, hey, you handle this whole situation wrong, so now we're going to investigate. And the person never complained. But it is really important that agencies police themselves. And I think most agencies have that policy in place where they do random searches or reviews of body cam. And that's a way of making sure that your officers are in line with policy.
Smokey, go ahead.
Well, feedback on that, I've been around a long time in law enforcement, and I had to adapt myself to the body camera system when I came on scenes because of, it may be a hot scene where words are used,
Not by you, of course, right?
Well, I have my days. But you have to always remember that the body cameras were in place, that are put in place to have transparency. And transparency to me is honorable because, well, our department has to implement policies that create a reasonable expectation that recording will be seen by Chief Bumpers, that recording can be seen by Jeffrey Boney, that those body cams are reviewable by the public. That means that any person, if Sam Hill, just a name on the top of my head, Sam Hill say, I want to copy that body camera footage from that event. That means the department is required through the Public Information Act to provide that body camera information. So, but the department has some perils. If it's an active investigation, something like that, it can write to the Attorney General office and say, hey, this is why we want to withhold it, and it can be withheld because it could, this would cause the event is over. That doesn't mean that something happens after that event. And like Chief said, we have policies in place where the sergeant has to review so many body cameras footage from the deputies per week. And like she said, you come across some incidents where the citizens aren't complaining, but officers have violated some type of policy. So
let's talk about that, because another bill that was signed in the law that went into effect this morning is Senate Bill 69, which prohibits law enforcement officials from using chokeholds or excessive force during arrest unless necessary to prevent officer or bystander injury, and any officers who witness these violations are required to report the incident. They implemented this because clearly this was happening frequently, and of course in the wake of what happened to George Floyd, that kind of brought even more awareness. That, of course, Eric Garner and I Can't Breathe words that were uttered. So it's so refreshing yet disheartening to know that prior to these types of laws or this implementation of body cameras and stuff like that, that these things were happening more often than not, and cops were just getting away with it.
Well, Carol, I met a lady by the name of Carol Horn one time. Carol Horn was a Buffalo police officer in New York, Buffalo, New York police officer. I'll be fast. She had stopped her partner from choking African-American suspect. Her partner in turn turned around and punched her in the mouth.
And broke her teeth.
And knocked her teeth out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she and then eventually she was fired from the department. Just recently, the department the judge ruled that she can get her pension back along with her time and her back pay. But the stretch of going through that was tough for her. And my only qualm is that when you fighting a suspect, you can't think about, you don't want to violate his rights with excessive force, but in a heated fight, you may grab a chokehold, you may grab this and that in a heated fight. I've been in heated fights before with suspects in the house when I was in patrol. But the thing is, you got to know when to stop. When his force stop, your force should stop. But clearly, the departments have moved up. We've got now tasers, we have spray, we have batons, we have all kind of non-lethal things, non-lethal equipment to help us do a better job. But the duty to intervene, I agree with that, because you have some officers do, in a heated moment, get carried away. And you have to have someone that's with a cool head to say, hey, we got him. Enough is enough. And there's never been any punitive things done to the officers who hadn't stopped anybody. Years ago, and she can tell you, I know she worked for police before, that when officers got into a fight, you kind of like turn away and walk away. You turn away and walk away because you don't want to see anything. You know what I'm saying? But now you can't turn away and walk away. You have a duty to intervene when someone is in custody. The scene is calm, and so I agree with that standard of law. But again, if you're when you're fighting with a suspect, and he's throwing punches and you throwing punches and they kicking, you kicking, until you get them in control. I'm not saying to abuse them, but you have to go home to see your family that day. You have to do what it takes. Anybody can coach a problem and see the officers fighting. And then they say, well, the officers fighting, officers in that, but it's some suspect may have done. I don't know. I don't know. I can't sit in the head of each officer, lawful officer that work in Harris County. But the thing I'm saying is that it has to stop. And excessive force has to stop, and we're in positions, myself and the chief, to ensure that policies are in place to stop that type of conduct.
You sound like you having flashbacks over there, Smoke.
I came along in the
80s. Chief Bumpers, your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm happy to say that we had the policy duty to intervene, and we banned chokeholds. That policy was in place since 2016, I think. So we were already ahead of the game in that area. And I know several other chief friends of mine, they had those same policies also. And so when everything happened with the murder of George Floyd, and of course, they came out with a document that 8 can't wait. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah,
where it listed. And so we took that document to do a check of ourselves. And I'm happy to say everything on that document we were already doing. And so we just took that as an opportunity. Just let's do our own checkup of our agency to see what we're doing. And with that, after the George Floyd murder, I immediately had a meeting with all of our field training officers, because we know George, Chauvin was training officers. He was a trainer. And we've seen this happen before, where when the senior officers training somebody, they have a tendency to show out. And when I looked at that video, of course, in my mind, it was definitely a murder. But I also saw someone who was being very arrogant, showing out in front of new officers. Once you can put your hand in your pocket and somebody's yelling and you're just real smug about it. But we wanted to make sure our field training officers understood that if you're training someone and they see you cross the line, I don't care if they've been here 1 hour, they have a duty to intervene. So we're making sure that we tell them that once we hire them, and making sure that our field training officers know that they're held to a very high standard, whether they're training or not. All of our personnel are held to that higher standard, that we're going to be respectful and treat people with respect, and at all costs. I don't care if we're taking them to jail, we're going to treat them with respect, because that is what is expected of us as public servants. And so we use that opportunity to drill down, remind our people of what our policies say, remind them of the high standard that we intend to hold at all times, and just take that and use it to be a teachable moment. It's unfortunate that someone lost their lives, and the worst thing is for a police officer to kill someone. All police officers hate a bad cop more than anybody else, and I know that's been said over and over, and it's really true, that it just kind of hits you. It's a gut punch, because you took an oath to serve and protect, not to take a life unwarranted. And so that was something that not only here at work that I wanted to make sure that I communicated, but again, I think it's my duty outside of this uniform to also educate our communities. So I'm a part of NOBLE, which is a national organization of Black law enforcement executives. And we also took that opportunity to make sure that our membership was educating our community about what happened, what can be done, similar to the 4 C's that Captain Phillips mentioned. Not particularly those 4 C's, but those are great, but we wanted to make sure that we were telling them, you have a right to complain, but you definitely need to comply. So we have a program at NOBLE called the Law in Your Community, which is taught throughout our communities, where members of the organization will go out and teach about how to respond when you're stopped by the police officer while driving, walking, or if they come to your house. So we want to make sure that our communities are educated on what to do and how to handle law enforcement. And those classes are being taught by law enforcement, so we can answer questions on both sides.
Gotcha. And if I'm not mistaken, you were a chair or president of Noble?
Yeah, I was a national president.
National president. Okay, okay, cool. Congratulations on that. Hey, listen, the last thing I want to, because we're up against the clock, House Bill 2795. Want us to briefly hit on this real quick. Introduced and authored by Representative Symphonia Thompson, and it involves the solicitation of prostitution up to 2-year felony conviction in Texas. First state to do this. The oldest profession in the world.
Well, solicitation of prostitution means to offer, accept, or compensate someone for sex. And
even conversation.
Well, if you offer, if you agree to a dollar bill amount, and you in that conversation, yes, you can be charged with solicitation. And is the part, and I say this: we have one of the biggest.
Hold on, did you know that, Josh? I'm asking my producer. Did you know that, Josh? All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, brother.
Yeah, if you agree upon an amount and so some type of sexual intercourse, a lewd act in exchange, you agree upon it, then that can be a form of solicitation. Secondly, in our area, and I say our area, Precinct 7 area in Southwest Houston, we have a street called Bissonnet Walkway. Bissonnet is full of young ladies who may be sex trafficking, or they may be working on their own. In the transition of this, we have came from prostitution now to sex trafficking, because everything now is sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. And some girls are freely working to pay rent, freely working to take care of their kids. But is it right? No, it's not right. But and to me, this bill target. If you look at targeting, you're targeting most. If you go on Bissonnet, you don't see white collar people down there. You see Hispanics, you see blacks, you see those people trying to make sales or try to solicit one of these young ladies for sex. So to me, I thought it could have been a little more thought of. We're trying to curb all sex trafficking. We want to rid Texas of sex trafficking, but we don't want to penalize a guy that's having a good time, saying that, hey, how much it is, and not really trying to do anything, but just saying, hey, how much it is.
And you get and you can get 2 years just for that.
And a felony conviction.
And a felony conviction.
So all that ties together, Jeff. Sex, active sex, felony conviction, no gun. You get a felony, no gun. So it all ties together.
Can't vote. Can't vote.
Can't vote. You can't become a fireman. You can't become a policeman. A lot of things you can't become.
Can't get certain public services. Live in certain like apartments or houses.
Apartments is all tied together, and I think the rest. If you look, I look at some of these things that happen when you used to put, have your picture on television, all that kind of stuff. Who do you see there? Yeah. Ask yourself that question, Chief. Who do you see there? Jeff, who you see there? So imagine all those guys just riding down the street, just having. I mean, back in the day when Jensen Drive, when I was coming, we used to ride down there and mess with the prostitutes. I was a young kid. We just messed with them.
Hey, hold on. Hey, don't talk too much now.
Well, I was a young kid then. I'm just saying. Some people just ride to look at the view. I mean, I was a young kid, man. All right,
Chief Bumpers, we're up against the clock. What are your thoughts on?
I agree. Well, I agree that the human trafficking portion of it, it's becoming a real issue throughout our country, and a lot of the young people. It's just not girls either. It's a lot of boys that are on the streets are being trafficked, and so I would hope that a lot of this, the thought behind this bill was to also curtail the human trafficking. And I'm one who believes, if it's legitimate, you shouldn't have to pay for it. So that's my thought on that. I don't think anybody should pay how much.
Well, some would argue, Chief Bumpers, that you're going to pay one way or the other.
One way.
Conversation moving nature.
Yeah. Window shopping. You don't need to look at a price tag. Just window shop. Okay.
I understand. Hey, listen, so much to talk about, and so much time that I have to do that. And of course, I'm always appreciate you guys for coming on, and I always have you back on to discuss these important items. So thank you for being on, Metro Police Chief Vera Bumpers, and Precinct 7, Harris County Precinct 7 Captain Smokey Phillips. Thank you so much for being on Real Talk Junkies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, God bless. All right, y'all. Hey, listen, great discussion. A lot more again to talk about. Today was the day. 12:01 a.m. Everybody went into effect. So as a recap, we discussed several bills relative to law enforcement and solicitation of prostitution. We discussed House Bill 1927, which was about permitless carry, and that anybody resident age 21 and over can now openly carry a handgun in public without any permit, license, or training. We talked about just now House Bill 2795, which punishes anybody who is caught in the act of solicitation of prostitution with a felony conviction that is up to 2 years in jail. House Bill 929 now requires any law enforcement official to keep their body cameras on during the entirety of any active investigations, and Senate Bill 69 prohibits law enforcement officials from using chokeholds or excessive force during arrests unless necessary to prevent officer or bystander injury, and any officers who witness these violations are required to report the incident. I want to give you a few other new laws you might be interested in before we get up out of here. House Bill 1900 financially punishes municipalities like Houston and others with a population of more than 250,000 people if they ever decide to reduce their police budget, and it allows the state of Texas to punish them by reducing their sales tax revenues and preventing them from having any increases on their property taxes if they reduce the police budget. This is a response to that, what do they call it? Defund the police. Then you got House Bill 1518. A lot of y'all gonna like this. It allows all of y'all now here in Texas to buy wine and beer in any store that sells it at 10 a.m. instead of 12 noon. You got 2 hours to get drunk in the morning, up to from 10 to noon. Under the current law is 12, but now it's 10 o'clock. Senate Bill 8 bans abortions after an ultrasound can detect a fetal heartbeat as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. House Bill 1280 outlaws abortion in the state of Texas effectively 30 days after any potential United States Supreme Court decision that could come forth that overturns the long-standing Roe versus Wade Supreme Court ruling. House Bill 1535, it allows individuals with conditions such as epilepsy and autism to access medical marijuana, and individuals with any form of cancer or PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, will be able to use low THC cannabis for medical purposes. Also, you got House Bill 19, which now requires any driver of a commercial vehicle. Hey, listen to y'all. If y'all doing Uber and Lyft, you need to listen to this. Or if you are working for a company doing deliveries, if you drive delivery trucks or work for Uber and Lyft, any of those type of companies, you can be found liable in court for causing a car crash that results in injury or death, even before a case can be brought against the employer. Yes, that's right. You individually, not Lyft, not Uber or the company you're driving for, you. Also, Senate Bill 224, it allows eligible individuals to bypass enrollment interviews and have a shortened application process to simplify access to SNAP. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program for seniors and disabled people on fixed incomes. There's so many other new laws that you got to familiarize yourself with that went into effect this morning at 12:01. You don't want to be one of those individuals who says you didn't know. As the saying goes, ignorance is no excuse for the law. Stay woke, Texans, especially y'all black and brown Texans out there. Your life will depend on your wisdom and decision-making during these challenging times, especially with this permitless carrying bill that is now in effect. Hey, y'all, that'll do it. Real Talk Junkies, always love to be before you. Go check us out, forwardtimes.com. Again, that's www.forwardtimes.com. Check me out at jeffreylboney.com if you want to interact with me personally. And of course, don't argue with me on the way soon. Peace.